abandoned swathes of the population is what we were told by some of your friends, former friends today. They followed your lead on things like Europe and immigration, and you've abandoned them. How do you see it?
I've been rigidly consistent. I've said throughout my time standing in democratic politics that my priority is to get us out of the European Union. I've been tediously and boringly, rigidly consistent. And I think anyone in any doubt as to what I wanted to achieve in politics is in no doubt getting us out of the European Union, and we're beginning to see that process delivered today. Of course, there'll be one or two people in my former party who will feel aggrieved, but this has always been about more than just party politics. It's been about getting our country out of the European Union, and I'm pleased that that process begins today.
So UKIP is done now, it's a busted flush. We don't need the party anymore.
I want to talk respectfully about some of the 4 million people who voted UKIP at the last election, but I'm making the journey away from them because I feel job done. I feel today is a day when all UKIP voters and supporters and members can take real satisfaction. We should give ourselves a medal or a knighthood. No one else is going to. And we should take quiet satisfaction that we made this happen. But I'm personally making a journey away from UKIP. If others want to remain with the party, I wish them luck. But I suspect that most people who voted UKIP will recognise job done. And our 23-year success story as a party is tremendous. But I don't really think that a party that's principally about getting us out of the EU can really complain, given what the government has now done.
So the party should now be dissolved. The work is done.
I don't want to undermine good people if they want to carry on as UKIP members and campaigners. But fundamentally, job done. We won, for goodness sake. Today marks the point when the government of the United Kingdom realigned its priorities after a 44-year era with the priorities of folk in places like Clacton. It's a wonderful day. We've won. Job done.
So why won't you say? Why are you backing away from saying that it's all over for the party then? If the job is done for UKIP and you no longer want to represent UKIP, the only person to represent UKIP within the House of Commons, why won't you say to people like Aaron Banks, who finances UKIP, and Nigel Farage, who is less than complimentary about you? In fact, Aaron Banks saying that you're borderline autistic and you have a mental illness. That's not very polite, is it? Why are you continuing to be polite about the party?
I'm familiar with the unkind comments that one or two people in the upper echelons of my former party have sometimes made about me, but I think it's really important in politics to allow people to be characterised by what they say. I'm not going to respond by saying unkind things. I hope people will judge me on what I say. I will never say unkind things about any of the 17.5 million people who voted to leave the European Union. They're all good people, as indeed are many Remainers. If people want to trade insults, there are other, they should stay on Twitter.
Okay, well, let's take you to where you stand now. You're an independent. I've been speaking to some local UKIP supporters here and councillors earlier on today. Just have a quick listen. This is what they had to say.
Staggered that he has not called a by-election. He's left the party. He's no longer a UKIP MP. The people of Clacton voted for a UKIP MP. He has enough integrity to know that he should be calling a by-election, so I would probably be asking him why not.
I don't think he's got any right to stay as an MP, in my opinion, and I think there should be a by-election. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't get it, to be honest with you. I don't know where it's coming from that he can just stand as an independent.
Mr. Carswell, there should be a by-election is what your local constituents think. Are you going to give them one?
I'm familiar with the arguments of some of those UKIP councillors that you interviewed. A couple of them wrote in the local Gazette a couple of weeks ago saying that I should leave the party. I've now done what they demanded in that letter. I don't know why they're not happy. But fundamentally, I'm not changing party. Today in the House of Commons, I sat on the opposition benches. I would resign and trigger a by-election if I was changing party, as I did previously. I was the only member of the House of Commons to have done so in, I think, 45 years. But I'm not ultimately accepting the authority of another party. Think about it. If every time an MP lost or resigned the whip, they triggered a by-election, that would actually empower the party bosses. It may sound like a semantic difference, but rather like a decimal point. It has major consequences.
Did you say that if 20% of your constituents wanted a by-election, then you would trigger one?
I'm in favour of the right of recall, and I've advocated the right of recall. But expecting me to trigger a by-election when I resign the whip is the precise opposite of what a recall should do. A recall should strengthen the voters against the party bosses. If every time someone lost or resigned the whip, that forced them to have a by-election, that would be the antithesis of recall. It would strengthen the party bosses. Look, I'm hyper accountable to voters, and I'm incredibly grateful for you for explaining what voters in my constituency think. Since I left my house at 7:30 this morning, I can't imagine their attitudes have changed a great deal. I know a great deal about what my constituents think. I wrote to over 20,000 of them on this very subject. I have had literally thousands of responses, and they're overwhelmingly positive.
My question remains, I'll pose it to you again. 20%, if they said that they wanted a by-election, would you give them one?
I'm not triggering a by-election, and several days on from my decision to resign the whip, there will be no by-election in Clacton, and I'm absolutely watertight on this issue, and I think the overwhelming majority of my constituents are on my side on this. You may have found some UKIP councillors who feel a bit huffy, but frankly, that tells you more about party politics than my constituents.
Okay, so Nigel Farage says he's going to write to every single constituent and say, you know what, you should push this man for a by-election because he's no longer representing you as he said that he would. How do you feel about him doing that?
It's wonderful, Nigel, giving advice on how to engage with constituents and engage with constituency opinion. He's got quite a lot of form on this, but with respect, I think that 20,000 plus that I wrote to have responded in a way that's overwhelmingly positive. Nigel's got some great thoughts on how to engage with opinion in a parliamentary constituency. It's not always worked out well for him.
You've never been a comfortable kipper, though, have you? The Tories would be delighted to have you back. Has it crossed your mind?
I'm again trying to explain that it is possible. I've been consistent in wanting to get out of the European Union. I've gone into politics saying that that's what I want to achieve. And yet you somehow cast aspersions on my motives for being consistent. Why not ask a minister who perhaps got selected as a Tory MP by sounding Eurosceptic, then campaigned for Remain and now wants to vote Leave? Why not ask them about consistency? I've been tediously consistent on this issue. I'm a little surprised that you're casting aspersions on my motives. I want what I say I want, which is to get us out of the European Union. Today we're achieving that. I don't understand why my former party can't be happy.
I'm asking you these questions because I'm in your constituency and your constituents are posing these questions as we were speaking to them today. The party that you previously represented are also asking why on earth, if you no longer represent that party, you won't have a by-election. I'm also putting it to you that the Conservatives would be delighted to have you back as one of their own, and lots of Conservatives also supported leaving the European Union. So that would seem potentially quite a good fit.
Well, I wish this government well, and I will be supporting the government on some key issues to make sure that they deliver on their Brexit mandate. But I don't really feel under any inclination to rejoin the Conservatives, apart from anything. If I was to rejoin the Conservatives, consistent with what I've just told you, I'd need to trigger a by-election, and I'm not about to do that. But look, it's perfectly possible, surely in this day and age, to be in favour of what a Prime Minister is doing and supportive of their policy, but also to hold them to account for when they get things wrong. Perhaps, you can expect me in the tradition of a national liberal or a liberal unionist. Sir Julian Ridsdale, who represented my Clacton constituency for nearly 50 years, was a liberal unionist. And I think he would have understood exactly what I meant when I said I'll support the government where they need supporting and oppose them when it's right to oppose them.
Final thought, you're running scared really though, aren't you? You think that you might not win a by-election, which is why you won't call one, because if you were cast iron, you would call one.
Do I strike you as someone who's particularly scared of by-elections? I've triggered a by-election and won it.
Yes, you do.
I triggered a by-election. Well, I triggered and won a by-election and enjoyed the largest swing to any party in any election in British history. I love referendums, I love by-elections, I love general elections.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.